Stolen identities. The forced sterilization of disabled women and girls in Australia. In this day and age, one would expect Australia, a developed first world country, to still practice outdated procedures such as forced sterilization. However, Australia's long-standing attitude towards disabled people has led to the continued sterilization of disabled women without their consent. Forced sterilization is sterilization in the absence of the free and informed consent of the individual concerned. It is considered an act of violence and constitutes torture under international law. The issue of the mass sterilization of women and young girls has been the subject of debate since the 1980s, although little to no legislation has been passed by the Australian courts to prohibit it. A possible reason why Australian perceptions of disabled people remain stuck in the past compared to other countries is World War II. In the 20th century, eugenics was generally accepted by countries all over the world, such as the USA, Canada, and Japan. Only after eugenics became associated with Nazi Germany did Allied countries gradually begin to abandon eugenic theories. However, long-standing racial tension between white Australians and native Aboriginals led to Australia's continuation of eugenic policies even after most of the international community switched perspectives and condemned eugenics. The Australian government has tried to appease organizations such as the United Nations demanding reform by saying current Australian laws already regulate forced sterilization. However, such regulations are easily manipulated, and despite UN and organizations asking, petitioning, and submitting inquiries to the Australian government has refused to take any new action or to pass laws actually prohibiting forced sterilization. In fact, since 2005, United Nations bodies have consistently recommended that the Australian government enact national legislation prohibiting forced or coerced sterilization of girls and women. In January 2011, the UN Human Rights Council endorsed a recommendation to the Australian government to introduce prohibitive legislation pertaining to the sterilization of girls and women with disabilities. The Australian government simply responded by saying that they would work with states and territories to clarify and improve laws and practices governing the sterilization of women and girls with disability. The Family Court of Australia is where families of disabled females can submit a request for sterilization. In 2003, then Chief Justice of the Family Court of Australia, Alastair Nicholson, reflected on successive governmental failures in addressing the sterilization of disabled females. I have no real knowledge of why successive governments of both federal and state haven't taken a greater degree of interest in this area. It does concern me that the issue hasn't been taken up in any real sense. Australians have attempted to justify forced sterilization by arguing that it is for the good of the state, that disabled people have an incapacity for parenthood, and that sterilization prevents pregnancy resulting from sexual abuse of disabled people. This last argument is valid. According to the CASA Forum report, 90% of disabled women and girls are sexually abused in their lifetime. But this dramatic rate of sexual abuse demonstrates just how much disabled women are dehumanized and disrespected in Australia. Australia's culture around disabled people must eventually change, but meanwhile, legislation must be created to protect them from forced sterilization.